It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. It's my lucky day. My lucky day. Don't need a pot of gold.
Good morning, everybody. Today's July 30th. That's crazy. We're like more than halfway through 2020 now. Anyway, I want to welcome you to Coffee and Cloud Native. My name is Adrian Goins. Every night I scour the internet for news. I sound like Batman or something, right? But I do. I scour the internet for news and content related to Kubernetes and Cloud Native, and every day you will find me here to share the bits that I find interesting. This is a curated list of content. I go through around 200 submissions every night, and I select around 10 for the next day's show. Basically, the criteria is if I won't get fired for talking about it, and also if I would use it, then I'll talk about it. I try to end each day with new knowledge that I didn't have when the day began, and I am grateful that you're here with me so that we can all learn and grow together. We only have a half an hour. Let's jump into it. Today, the internet will continue to be what the internet is here in Chile. If you are in the chat and we are having problems, you can let me know in the chat. Not that I'll be able to do anything about them. Every day starts with Adrian complaining about his internet. Anyway, this is a lead in to the upcoming masterclass with Rancher. Helm is one of those things that we all use, but you might not understand it enough to use it with your own applications or to just use it. I mean, if you use Linux, you might be familiar with RPM, or you might be familiar with dpackage or yast or whatever, yum, whatever the thing is that you use, but we generally just install packages. The thing with Kubernetes is you're also frequently installing your own charts. So if you find yourself doing something frequently, just wrap it up in Helm. Or if you find yourself doing something that you want to share with others, wrap it up in Helm. Helm can deliver a standards-based approach to application deployment within Kubernetes clusters when teams are remote or distributed. I love the word distributed. It's a fancy way of saying not in the same place, which technically we already covered by saying that they're remote. JFrog, probably you know about JFrog. JFrog created Chartcenter, which is a free, do I have a picture of it here? There we go. It's a free Helm aggregator, so it collects Helm charts from all sorts of different places, and they're immutable. They also show security information, dependencies. My dogs are freaking out in the other room. There must be a rabbit or something. Sorry if you hear them barking. So Chartcenter has a number of things that we'll actually talk about in just a second. Helm 3 includes a number of changes besides just the removal of tiller, and they're all focused on security. For example, there's a secrets plugin, so you're not at risk of storing secrets in values.yaml. Hello, internet. There's a chain of custody. There's provenance files, so that the signer can attest cryptographically that this is what I put into the package, and then you, when you go to install it, can make sure that it hasn't changed. There's lots of stuff in Helm 3 that's worth learning about. So if you want to join the masterclass that Rancher is having on August 11th, it's with JFrog as well, and you can learn more about that. But let's look at Chartcenter really quick. Well, first of all, here's JFrog's talk about Chartcenter and about Helm and about security in general in your Kubernetes cluster. So we'll have this linked in the description. But Chartcenter itself, it collects Helm charts from all over the place. And in the article that I just showed you on the previous tab, they talk about what they've done with Chartcenter for security, for demonstrating and showing dependencies in the packages, and giving you a way. Let's just pick something. Let's pick pgadmin. That's something that I use. There's Ranchers there too. That's cool. You can, instead of pulling from Helm repos all over the internet and just hoping that the chart that you get is not going to totally own your stuff, you can pull from Chartcenter instead, and they will show you not just the README for the chart. It's a really nice UI too. They'll give you chart info. Where did it come from? Who maintains it? It's not used by anything else. What dependencies does it have? And then you see this little triangle. Oh no, there's a CVE. You come to the security tab, and you can actually see information about the CVEs. Something that they do that I think is really nice is this indicates that there's actually a high severity CVE, but by default, they don't show you what that is because they don't want to say, hey, internet, go compromise everybody who's using pgadmin. They show you medium and low severity CVEs, and you can look at the CVEs, and you can decide if you still want to use the package, and they also make it possible for people to dispute or annotate the severity of the CVE. So, for example, you'll see CVEs, because CVEs are kind of generic. So there might be a CVE for a particular library that's bundled, but it's only executable on 32-bit systems from 1984 or something like that. So the person who maintains the chart can come in and annotate that and say, look, this doesn't actually apply. You don't have to worry about it unless you're running this back in the 80s. Their approach to security and to making this information accessible to everybody, I think, is extremely powerful and extremely valuable, and it's totally free. So it's one of those things where it's like, well, why not use it? Because it gives you all kinds of benefits. All right, let's look at the chat really quick. We got people joining and saying hello. Hey, hi. Marcel from Switzerland. Good to see you. Ariel is here. Streaming is okay. Thank you. Jamo, hey. Wojtek, cześć. Bill, good morning, Bill. Tej, hola, amigo. Jamo says, good to see that JFrog is relevant still. JFrog's super relevant. Artifactory is a great piece of tech, and they have X-Ray, which allows you to do image vulnerability scanning of the images that you push into Artifactory. They're great. But Chartcenter is something that they've done, which obviously it exists so that you can see, it's powered by JFrog X-Ray, and so that they stay on your radar, but it's still super valuable. All right, I spent too much time talking about them. Let's go to the next thing. Secure Coding Tournament. This looks cool. There's a meetup, the SBA Research. I don't know who they are. And they've joined forces with the Vienna DevOps Security Meetup. I don't know who they are either, but hi, welcome to the show. And they've also partnered with Secure Code Warrior. I need to scroll all these up to this top before I start the stream. Secure Code Warrior. And these guys are doing a meetup, virtual, obviously, so anybody can join, where people will be challenged to find and fix security bugs in actual code. It's gamification. There are 4 categories: Java Spring, Angular, Kubernetes, and Docker. And they go so far as to say if you have no skills or you're a super beginner, that's fine. You can still come, participate. There will be challenges for every skill level, and that just looks like a fun thing to do. So I wanted to call out that this is happening on August 5th. 5th? 5th. 5th is one of those words that we just abbreviate into bad English. Secure Code Warrior looks like they've got some really, well, they've certainly got a really great website. They have tournaments, training, courses, assessments, lots of other stuff going on there. They're a sponsor of the Secure Coding Tournament. I'll have their site linked in the description as well. Conf42 is having an SRE conference today. Today. I don't know why I didn't know about this before yesterday, but it's today. And it's totally virtual. And SREs. I love how in our day and age, like everybody has a new job title for something that used to just be lumped as you were either a developer or a system administrator. But now you might be a this or a that or whatever. So SREs, they're the guys that keep the lights on. And when I had a managed services provider, one of the things that we struggled with was if we did our job correctly, nobody knew that we existed. Like we would do a lot of maintenance work to make sure that systems didn't go down. And then every year at the end of our contract, they'd be like, well, we didn't need you all year long because everything worked fine. So frustrating. SREs do a lot of work to make sure that the sites that we use every single day stay up and running, and they don't get praised enough for that. In fact, before there were SREs, I had a client. The client was with me for more than 10 years, and they had a guy who worked in their internal IT department. And he and I would just get together over coffee and we would talk. This is when I lived in New York. And he was going to leave after being there for at least 10 years that I was also working with them. But for longer than that, he was old school. And he was going to quit. And he was going to go and open up an ice cream shop. I was like, why do you want to open an ice cream shop? Like, that's totally different from IT. And he said, look, in my job, nobody ever calls me unless something is broken. And when they're calling me, they're mad, they're angry, they're frustrated, they're yelling, they can't do something. And that's all I deal with every single day. When you run an ice cream shop, people come in and they might be sad, but they always leave happy. And I just want people to be happy. And I thought that was really poignant, that we deal with so much stress. And even, from our side, like I contact the IT people who work for Rancher, and I'm not as nice as I should be. Because by the time I contact them, I've exhausted all of my available options and I'm frustrated. And we should remember that the people on the other end of the line are also people, and they deserve to be treated nicely. I try to remember that. I totally fail at it. But anyway, SREs, back to this. There's a bunch of different stuff going on here. They've got talks on team building, communication, remote work, motivation, some stuff on chaos engineering for resilience. And they've even got a talk on chaos engineering where the experiments are actual cyber attacks, not just something going in and randomly killing pods. They have declarative bare metal provisioning using Tinkerbell, which I hadn't heard of. Do I have Tinkerbell up here? I do. Tinkerbell was built by Packet for doing complex bare metal provisioning in a structured fashion. So they'll be doing a demonstration and talk about that. If you do bare metal stuff and you want more than just pixie booting, Tinkerbell looks dope. What else? They've got specific information for SREs who are working with Kubernetes. They've got exercises for developing creativity, developing the environment in which your brain can pop ideas out. I always make a joke when somebody asks me about can you go and figure out something? I'm like, if I don't have an answer right away, but I know that it's something I've encountered, I don't dwell on it. I say I just submit it to the database for background processing. And I just fire a query off to the back of my mind, and then I'll go back to what I'm doing. And invariably, some number of hours or days later, I'll be doing something totally unrelated. I'll be in the shower, I'll be falling asleep, I'll be watching TV, and boom, the query returns. You can actually develop that process so that your brain, so you can drop into that mode or drop into that flow and generate ideas. I started doing something in the morning before this show where I used to get up and I would grab my phone and I'd go out and I'd be making my first cup of coffee and I would sit there and I'd check Hacker News and I'd check the news and I'd check this. And I don't do that. Now I just grab a notebook and I just go out, and while coffee is making, I just do nothing. And ideas pop into my head, thoughts pop into my head, and I write them down. And that's where, in fact, the idea for this show came from. So they'll have talks about that kind of stuff. But it's today, and it's totally free. And if I scroll down to the bottom here, register now for free access. Hopefully it's still free. Let me refresh this page. Hopefully they didn't shut it down for today. Yeah, totally. Still free. Go register. There's a lot of cool stuff there. And if you look at previous stuff that they've done, click this little back arrow here, they have some earlier sessions, one of which is about chaos engineering from January of this year, and they've got all of the content available online for free. We talk a lot about chaos engineering here. Go get more info. It's free. This is a great opportunity these days of working at home for all of us to go learn things, push the boundaries of what you know, experiment, develop new skills, and use the resources that people are making available to help you be successful. Moving on. Tinkerbell. Kubestone. Kubestone. This is not new, but I'm specifically promoting it on today's show for a couple of reasons. One, it's open source and useful. Two, I discovered this because one of the submissions from yesterday was a link to an article that somebody had written for Hacker Noon, and it was about Kubestone. And I was reading the article, and it seemed too structured. Well, it turned out that person had simply copy-pasted the entire quick start guide from Kubestone and put his name on it and posted it to Hacker Noon. I dug through some more of his stuff. Everything he has up there is plagiarized. I told Hacker Noon about it. Plagiarism, I'm an actual writer, and plagiarism sucks. Plagiarism hurts people who spend the time to create real content. So I wanted to give a shout out to Kubestone so that they get some benefit out of having their quick start copy pasted. This is an open source benchmark operator. It's a benchmark suite for Kubernetes. It will benchmark your clusters for CPU, disk, memory, network. It has an HTTP load tester built into it. It can do benchmarking of Postgres, and they have additional plugins planned or in development for etcd, general Kubernetes stuff. I don't know what that means. Maybe, smacking around the API or doing some chaos engineering. And Spark. Okay. Easy to set up, has an operator, has some great documentation, and you can go kick your Kubernetes clusters in the face and see how they do. Now, benchmarking, of course, is different from chaos engineering. Benchmarking is actually seeing how they perform under legitimate amounts of load. And all of the tools that they use are also other open source tools. If I open up this benchmarks thing here, you can see that they're using stuff like Bio and iPerf and pgbench and sysbench, but they've bundled it into a Kubernetes operator with a whole CRD and a way to talk to it that allows you to run this stuff inside your cluster and get real data from inside it. Yesterday, Amazon announced reInvent 2020. And they dusted everyone. I was talking about KubeCon earlier this week. Go to KubeCon, please sign up for KubeCon. Rancher's going to be there. Lots of people are going to be there. All of the virtual conferences. The people at Amazon are so smart. Every single virtual conference that has come out since we all started working from home has been more or less the same number of days as a real conference. KubeCon is like 3 days. Or they're even less. They'll be 1-day shows. Amazon was like, you know what? Let's make it 3 weeks. 3 weeks. And let's make it free. It should be called FreeInvent. Totally free. 3 weeks long. You have no reason not to go. There's gonna be so much stuff here. It's crazy. 3 weeks long. And it's fantastic. So you can go to, well, this will be linked. They have an option to sign up to get more information, because they haven't really said anything other than this. I can't actually sign up because it uses Marketo, and all links to Marketo are totally destroyed by my Pi-hole that filters all the ads in my house. So I'm going to have to connect to my 3G network and then go sign up from there. Anyway, FreeInvent 2020. We'll see you there. I've covered ENV0 before on this show. Actually, before I talk about this, we're doing pretty good on time. Let me just hop over and check the chat. Hey, Sajad. Hey, Baran. Baran from Turkey. Hi, it's nice to see you. Justin. Justin says there's an awesome book that touches on background brain processing called Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker. Thank you. I will look into that. I don't read as much as I should, but I listen to audiobooks. I try not to listen and do other stuff. I just literally sit on the couch and listen, mostly because it's really difficult to get books into Chile. They tax them differently, or I don't know why. So cool. Thank you for the recommendation on that. Numo, Captain Corsair, good morning. He's talking about plagiarism. He says that when he blogs, he always puts the sources at the top. And even though the ideas and the wording will be his, giving back credit to the source of the idea is just as important. That's absolutely true. You guys see in the tweets that come out here that I reference where I got this information. Some of this comes off of Twitter, in which case I'll follow I'll recurse through the tweets back to the original tweet if it was retweeted. There's a lot of tweets. And I always try to, give a thanks to whoever brought the information to me. Yesterday somebody responded and said, well, I was just tweeting about learnkates.io. And I replied and said, you know what, I'm going to thank you anyway. I'll thank LearnKates as well, but I'll thank you because you're the one who made the tweet. You're the one who brought it to my attention. You're the one that allowed me to find their stuff. And that's really all you have to do is, first of all, don't copy stuff. But if somebody helps you be successful, if somebody helps you do a thing, just thank them. Give them credit. ENV0. We've talked about them. They do provisioning and management of, it's Terraform backed, and they have a whole layer abstraction that allows operators to permit Terraform plans to be run to do various things inside the cluster, and then they built a bunch of value on top of that. Right now, env0 has a free tier that's very generous, but while they're in beta, their team tier, which is normally $100 a month, is also free. We came upon them from Jerome Pettazzoni, and they have an article now about doing namespace management. And who doesn't love matrix references? Probably anybody who's young doesn't love matrix references, but I'm not young. When I first looked at this, I thought, this competes with Rancher. But the thing about competition is that, well, there's lots of people who use Rancher. There's lots of people who don't use Rancher. And env0 doesn't fully compete with Rancher. It's more like a Venn diagram where there's a slight overlap. But they do a lot of other things. And I don't want to only talk to the people who use Rancher. I want to talk to the people who have problems that need to be solved. And if this tool solves a problem, then I want to make sure that you know about it. So I went back and I reread the article with a clean, fresh set of eyes. And, well, they talk about doing namespace management with Terraform, and then they give some examples. First of all, they explain why Terraform is a good tool, why the way that Terraform works is appropriate for teams. It's the winner for infrastructure as code as far as the tools that are out there. And then he goes on to give use cases for things like automating environment deployments and teardowns. So you could shut down a dev environment every night when people don't need it. You could recoup the costs. There we go. That's there. And then also talking about examples of things like automating environment deployments by pull request. So when somebody submits a PR, an environment gets built and the code changes get applied to it so that somebody can test it. You can do this with Rancher as well, but it requires some extra, basically scripting that you have to do inside your CI/CD platform to plug back into Rancher's API. I've talked to the content coordinator at Rancher, and I would like to see more interaction between env0 and Rancher because I think that they're very complementary. Just go look at env0. It does really cool stuff. So there's an article on Terraform management with namespaces. Terraform management of namespaces. Capture the flag. NodiHub. I don't know who NodiHub is. This came across my desk yesterday, and they did a capture the flag. Capture the flag is like a penetration testing game where you have to get in and get things. They did it for Easter, and they did it with Easter eggs. They have 9 Easter eggs stashed inside of this environment. And Easter was back in April. So they've released the code several months ago. But they've released the code for you to apply this yourself. They have a Vagrant file. You can put it into an existing K3s cluster. Yay, K3s. That's how I found it yesterday. And you can do penetration testing of your own environment. If you're interested in pen testing, if you're interested in finding and fixing vulnerabilities in Kubernetes, this will give you a compromisable, intentionally vulnerable cluster environment that you can start poking at. Let me know if you do this and if you find Easter eggs. But also, don't cheat, because obviously all of the code is right here. So you could just go and look at where the Easter eggs are. Really, put yourself to the test and see what you can do. They tell you where they are, so at least you know what to go poking at, and try to own your stuff. If you want more information about the original competition, that README back here doesn't give you a lot of information. It tells you how to install it, but it doesn't really give you anything else after that, which is appropriate. If you're given a system, it's your job to go and rattle the doors and windows and see what's there. But if you want more information on how the competition was originally structured, I'm also going to link to the original CTF page. And now we're on to today's tool of the day. Tool of the day, tool of the day. Tool of the day is Velero PVC Watcher. I've talked about Velero. Velero is a backup suite originally from Heptio. I like saying Heptio better than Tanzu. originally from Heptio that does backups and restores of Kubernetes resources. It can do it by namespace, by workload, by whole cluster, but it doesn't do data by default. Restic is a tool that does the data backup, and you can bundle Restic in with Velero as an extension, or you could use a tool like Stash that's actually built on top of Restic. I talked about Stash earlier as well. In either case, if you're using Velero, Restic requires that PVCs be annotated in order for them to be backed up. It's totally plausible that persistent volumes will be spun up and attached, and they won't be annotated, and therefore they won't be included in the backup. And you probably won't figure this out until you go to restore after a crisis and you don't have any of your data. This person, BitsBeats, created the Velero PVC Watcher that looks for PVCs that do not have the annotation and then raises them he basically triggers Prometheus Alert Manager to alarm that these need to be fixed. Just drop this into your cluster, and if any PVCs show up that are annotated, you will get an alarm. Then you can go back and fix it. And more importantly, don't just go back and fix it, but figure out why in the process chain that thing was born without the annotation and fix that. The part of ITIL and the part of, DevOps picked this up as well. Problem management is not just finding and fixing the problem. It's problem appears, you put a workaround in, you fix that, you do root cause analysis, you figure out why the root cause happened, and it's always going to trace back to a person, a process, a procedure, something that either wasn't followed or that wasn't complete enough. And you fix that so that you're not constantly putting out the same fire. Same thing here. This just raises the issue, and it's on you to go back and make sure that wherever the procedure was broken, that you actually fix that as well. We got a couple minutes left. Let's check the chat and see what we got. Wojtek's Matrix references rule. Yes, they do. That same client that I was talking about that had the guy who wanted to go to the ice cream shop, they met me in a data center back when we all used to hang out in data centers in the late 90s, early 2000s. And I was at my cage and they were at their cage, and I saw them and they were just like staring at a rack of Sun hardware like, what's not working? I went over and I asked them what was the problem, and I was able to fix their problem for them, and I just went back to my cage. And they started calling me Neo because apparently I would type something at like the keyboard that you had in your rack, and at the end of whatever I would type, I would just unconsciously go, and I still catch myself doing it. I don't know why I started doing it, but it was like I have submitted my code to the Matrix. Devin says that HCL plus Kubernetes manifests look very ugly. Yeah. I'm not sure how to fix that. Bill, can you recommend any informative resources? I have a little iPad mini over here that has the chat in it. That's why you see me like squinting at it. Can you recommend any informative resources for getting systems dressed and ready for school to handle an RKE or K3S deployment? All of the boring stuff that I gloss over in my videos. He says he finds himself spending hours and sometimes days trying to determine what went wrong with catch-up install. I do all of my provisioning with Ansible, and that's just me. You can also use Terraform. I know a lot of people use Terraform as well. But whatever you use for your provisioning, you're going to boot up a system and then do all your provisioning. That structure is developed over time. Start with something simple and say, okay, if I were to do this manually, these are the tools that I would install. This is the environment that I would install. I need this version of Docker. And when you find yourself doing something manually on a system to get it ready, spend the extra time to turn that into an Ansible playbook or a Terraform plan or something. It will take more time the first time that you do it, but you'll recoup that time in spades over the course of the future time if you are constantly spinning up systems. A good rule of thumb is don't optimize it the first time, optimize it the second time, because then you've demonstrated that, yeah, I'm going to actually need to do this. If you are in any type of virtualization environment, build yourself a template system. So get something to the state that you want it, and then stamp that out for the actual machines that you're going to deploy. When you find yourself needing to make changes, you can then write Ansible code or Terraform code that fixes or deploys stuff on your deployed systems, but then also go back and update the template so that you have that going forward. And that's why in my videos I gloss over all of that, is because literally I have an Ubuntu template and I'm just like clone, and that's it. And then I'll just run my whole Ansible playbook against it, go get some coffee or something, and come back and then continue. Marcel says Pi-hole has an option to disable the blocking for a number of minutes. Yes, that is true. I run all of my DNS with DNS over HTTPS because my provider is... Am I allowed to say fascist? Let's just say that my provider, for reasons unknown to me, decided that it would be a good idea to block ICMP and DNS queries across their network unless I'm querying their name servers. And since I don't want to do that, I run DOH. I actually have an account with NextDNS. If you don't know NextDNS, give them a quick shout out. They also have a very generous free tier, and you can... They're basically like Pi-hole as a service. You can do DNS over TLS, DNS over HTTPS. They have IPv6 endpoints. You can use them directly with individual systems. You can use them with your VPNs. They have an app for the phone. NextDNS is amazing. The thing is, I use them as my forwarder. So even if I block stuff on the Pi-hole, it's often also blocked by them. So I have to go into them and unchange it. It's all totally manageable. I'll get the Marketo thing fixed so that I can go and register for reInvent. Devin asks, have I looked at Blocky instead of Pi-hole? No, I haven't. I will make a note of that, and I will take a look. All right, we are over time. Blocky. And yeah, so let me jump to the outro. Thank you all for joining. I really like that we're having some back and forth in the chat, but I do want to keep this to 30 minutes, and I'm terrible at doing that. So we got to wrap it up. I will have links to all of this stuff in the video description. Today, you're actually going to see individual tweets about each of the things that I talked about with timestamps. So if you want to reference a specific point in time, or if you want to share a particular tool, the YouTube link will actually take people directly in the video to where I talk about that. All of that will be up in the next 30 minutes or so. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll see a notification and that the links are up, and then you'll also see all of the rest of the tweets throughout the day. If there's anything that you would like for me to consider for the show, let me know. My contact details are in the video description. You can tweet with the CNCN hashtag, and I will pick it up. And if I mentioned a tool that you use, let me know in the comments. I like to hear that people are using the things I talk about. If you liked what you saw today, this is the obligatory YouTube promotion. Subscribe to the channel. Subscribe. Click the like button so that YouTube shares the video with other people. And if you click the little bell thing, you'll get a notification every day when the next stream starts. I will be here every weekday for as long as there's something to talk about and for as long as my internet is behaving. And while there's always things to talk about, the internet isn't always behaving, but, so far we've been lucky. Good for us. I think if there's ever a night where, things are totally terrible, if, the power goes out in the region like it sometimes does, I'll just pre-record this and try to get it up for you guys to watch, and then I'll just hang out in the chat. So thank you all so much for joining. I hope you learned some stuff. Have a great day. Keep on learning.